Sometimes a fight can best be summed up by what you find on your Twitter feed. I'm going to read you out a few tweets that I was involved in on Saturday night whilst watching this fight. Two of them are quotes that I put up from the Sky commentary team. The first one comes from Jim Watt. He is doing the job without really taking anything back in return. The second one, I think from Jim Watt's co-commentator, a world-class performance. No, they're not referring to Floyd Mayweather. These tweets, talking about world-class performances, talking about doing the job without taking anything in return, are also not about Andre Ward. They're about Leeds' own Josh Warrington. Some of the funniest tweets are from the parody accounts that belong to some of the boxing promoters. Somebody tweeted, fake Eddie Hearns on Twitter, "Can we change this to a ladder match?" And Eddie Hearns wrote back, "No, that's for pay-per-view." And then he tweeted out, "Josh Warrington's going to tag in Vinnie Jones in the next round. Vinnie's going to kill the Filipino with a steel chair." How about real Carl Frampton versus Scott Quigg in a Hell in a Cell? It got better as the night goes on. I think Eddie Hearns then tweeted out, "Warrington gets dropped, the lights in the arena goes out, Carl Frotz enters the ring and cobras Tubieron while Vinnie Jones distracts the ref." It really was a night that was, in my opinion, entertaining for the wrong reasons. It may be unpopular for me to say this, but I believe Josh Warrington is an average fighter. I'll come on to that in a few minutes because, quite frankly, I think people are going to be more interested in hearing discussion about some of the drama that happened relating to the fight, rather than Josh Warrington as a fighter from a serious perspective. But I've got to say, this was one of the most bizarre nights of boxing I've ever seen in my life. So, Warrington's opponent, Tubieron, was tiny. He looked several weight classes below Josh Warrington. Now, he came out dressed in what I could only describe as tights. I mean, I didn't even know this was allowed. He was wearing like leggings and a skirt combination. It was bizarre to begin with. And, I mean, even preceding that, you had Johnny Nelson walking around a crowd with a microphone, talking to a load of drunks from Leeds, who were just screaming in the mic. I've never seen anything as preposterous. It was the most cringeworthy moment of boxing I think I've seen, with Johnny Nelson walking down this ramp saying to Leeds, "Oh, are you ready?" Absolutely mental. Warrington then walks out with Vinnie Jones, who is dressed like, I don't know, some sort of mafioso character, wearing like a waistcoat and a sort of hat. He looked absolutely ridiculous, but that's kind of by the by. He looked relatively normal compared to Warrington's opponent. To make matters worse, I mean, obviously the Leeds crowd are going mental. You've got beach balls flying into the ring. There was an issue with the timekeeping. Josh Warrington was absolutely dominating a round, and that round seemed to extend by 1 more minute. The round following, we had a 2-minute round. It's absolutely bizarre. It was like such a sort of comedy of errors. It's such a sort of WWE type event with things going wrong and Johnny Nelson emceeing the crowd, distractions, etc. It really was bizarre. Very, very bizarre. And unfortunately, I did a video yesterday discussing that I thought the pay-per-view event on May 30th was a genuine pay-per-view event based on the card. But unfortunately, this is what happens with the pay-per-view model, is the regular Saturday night shows are local affairs with locally relevant fighters and poor undercards, and that's really what it was. It was a C-level fight and a D-level card. Josh Warrington dominated the fight. He won pretty much every round, but in my opinion looked thoroughly average. I mean, Sky, Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, the commentary team are desperate to make this guy out to be the next Ricky Hatton. Clearly he's got huge fan support. Leeds have got behind him. He's got a mental following. But the reason that he's not going to be the next Ricky Hatton is because Josh Warrington will lose very, very quickly. And will persist in losing if they keep him at a high level. And therefore I don't think it's going to have time to build that momentum. The way the commentary team were talking about him, not only would you get the impression that he was a defensive genius, with sort of Mayweather slickness, but you'd also get the impression that he was the Deontay Wilder style puncher. I mean, they were saying like, oh, Warrington's going to score the knockout, surprised Warrington hasn't got him out of there with his power. Josh Warrington's got a 20% KO ratio. And I think, as somebody else put up on Twitter, the vast majority of that crowd will have a higher KO ratio than Josh Warrington. This guy is feather-fisted to the extreme. I mean, this is a guy who, in my opinion, makes like Martin Murray, Billy Joe Saunders, that kind of fighter look like a big puncher. He was hitting this opponent, who, as I say, was several weight classes below him, in my opinion, with everything. He was landing combinations, power punches, hooks, going to the head, going to the body. He was landing everything. The opponent was worn out. The opponent was completely gassed. The opponent was very poor defensively. But, didn't really look like he was going to get stopped, in my opinion. I think you can be a good boxer without having power. You can be a world champion without having an elite level power. But you need some sort of snap to your punches. I mean, for example, let's take Martin Murray, for example. Now, I'm not saying to beat Gennady Golovkin, you need to be a huge puncher. But what I'm saying is, when you're a very light puncher, what you're throwing isn't even enough to stop an opponent from coming in on you, because the opponent doesn't even care about taking one, because they know you're such a light puncher. And I think Josh Warrington falls into that category. Derek Chisora, not a big puncher in the heavyweight division. Light puncher for the elite level heavyweights. But he's got enough there. The people are still mindful about being defensive. But I think with Josh Warrington, he's so weak. He's such a light-fisted puncher that elite fighters just won't even be concerned about his power. And I think that's where the issue comes in. I think the other thing is, despite the quote from Jim Watt that I read out earlier, he's defensively horrific. Really defensively horrific. This guy who he was in with, who, quite frankly, I've seen better fighters down my local Wetherspoons. But this guy was catching Warrington. Warrington was leaving himself open when throwing big exchanges and combinations, and this guy was countering him at times. This guy was catching Warrington, not like the odd jab, with power punches, with hooks, He was timing him. Warrington as well, very, very one-dimensional fighter, Not great boxing pedigree, very much sort of, like very low level. He's just not a boxer, is he? I mean, he's not really got sort of lateral movement. He's not got a jab. He's not got defence. He's not got any sort of versatility whatsoever. He comes forward, he throws hooks, he tries to fight at close range. He's like a mid-range, close-range sort of operator. Throwing, he punches to the body, but it's just sort of looping hooks with limited power. Likes to fight sort of, as I say, mid-range, very close range, no real outside game. I'll tell you what, Lee Selby will whitewash this guy. Really will. The guy Lee Selby beat last time out, the Australian fella, I think named Joel Bunker, something like that. I think based on that performance alone, I'd have him schooling Warrington. I think I'd have him winning every round. I think Warrington would not be able to get inside or get into range with a fighter like Lee Selby, like he's been doing against these Z-level opponents. I think Selby would dance rings around him. I think Selby's jab hit him every time Selby threw it. I think the combinations and slickness from a fighter like Selby would absolutely confuse Warrington. And I think after 3 or 4 rounds of trudging forward, being kept at the end of a jab, eating leather, Warrington would not know what to do. I don't think he's got another string to his bow. I don't think he's got any versatility. And I expect a fighter like Lee Selby could pretty much dress him down in the ring and humiliate him. I reckon Hearn will delay that fight because Josh Warrington is clearly making a lot of money for Eddie Hearn in Leeds. He's filling up these Saturday night shows so Eddie Hearn can put the bigger names on pay-per-view bills. And I reckon Warrington's fees, the amount he's getting in his purse is probably smaller compared to other headliners. So I reckon financially Hearn is incentivised to try and delay that fight till next year. I reckon he wants to keep Warrington winning, keep him dominating in Leeds, keep that momentum going, and try and get 3 or 4 more big paydays out of him before he sticks in with Lee Selby, probably on pay-per-view. But yeah, I don't think anyone who knows boxing is going to tell me Warrington beats Selby. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let me know. I'm interested to discuss the event as a comedy of errors. I'm interested to discuss Warrington as a fighter. I'm interested to compare him to Lee Selby. Thanks for watching.